Hey, what's going on, guys? It's ETA Prime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at Android TV running on the all-new ODROID C4. And if you're not familiar with the ODROID C4, this is ODROID's newest offering to the single-board computer market. It features an Amlogic S905X3 CPU with a Mali G32 GPU and 4 gigs of LP DDR4 Ram. It's actually a really nice little board. I've done a couple other videos on it, running Android and Ubuntu, but today we're going to be taking a look at Android TV. Now this is Android TV based on Android 9, and we're going to be testing out the 4K performance of this little board. Usually when I record these, I use my game capture device, which will do up to 1080p 60 FPS, but today we're going to be capturing the screen on a 4K BenQ monitor. I've had a bunch of people ask me about 4K video playback on this board, so that's what we're going to be testing today, and some gaming. Now before we get started, I do want to mention if you're looking for a good Android TV for your big 4K television, go ahead and pick up an Nvidia Shield Android TV, be it the Tube version or the Pro version. You're just going to get much more life out of it, but this thing actually does a really great job for a $50 single board computer, and like I said, Android TV isn't the only operating system that we can install on this. So first up we have YouTube. Unfortunately, the YouTube app for this Android TV, at least the specific version that I can download from the Google Play Store, is only allowing us to display 1080p right here. But the video we're streaming is the 4K version, and I've set it to 4K. We haven't dropped any frames at all, and if you test out other single board computers with something like this, you'll notice it dropping frames even at 1080p. I gotta say, this Amlogic S905X3 chip actually does a really good job when streaming 4K content. Now, one of the reasons I always discourage people from using one of these boards with Android for 4K content is Widevine drivers. They're not installed on this version of Android, and I don't think they're officially ever going to be supported by the ODROID C4. So if you want to install the 4K version of, let's say, Netflix, it's just not going to work. I have the Android TV version here. We'll start it up. I get an error because this board doesn't officially support Widevine. Now I know there are hacks around this, but most people who install this from the Google Play Store will say, hey, Netflix isn't working on this. Now you could always sideload the phone or the tablet version and stick with 720p or 1080, but when you're buying something for a 4K television, you definitely want that 4K app to work in 4K. So if you've got a big, expensive 4K television or 4K monitor, get something that's officially going to work with those 4K apps like the Nvidia Shield Android TV or even the Xiaomi box. But I gotta say, for a little single board computer, this thing is actually turning out to be an awesome little option, especially at that $50 price point. With 4 gigs of RAM, a quad-core 2 GHz Amlogic CPU, it handles itself quite well, even playing 4K content from your local network or a local drive. And speaking of local drive playback, let's head over to everybody's favorite media player. We'll open this up, and I do have a few videos here. Now, one that I always test is Big Buck Bunny 4K 60 FPS, and we'll test that last because we do have some issues with it. But these demo 4K clips from Sony work really well, and these are running in HEVC. 4K 60 FPS, haven't noticed a single hiccup with this. We're using the hardware decoder with this little board, so we are accelerating it with the GPU. Check out the CPU usage here at the very bottom. It's relatively low for playing back 60 FPS 4K. We'll go with another one here. Again, HEVC, 4K, 60 FPS, absolutely beautiful, not a stutter, not a frame dip at all. We're running at 4K 60 constantly. But this doesn't mean that every single video format at 4K 60 is going to run at full speed. Here we have Big Buck Bunny 60 FPS H264. At 4K 30, it's perfectly fine, but when we move up to this 4K 60 version, we got a lot of stutters and the sound is way off. This has really been my go-to test, and it's really hard to get this to run on a single board computer. Really, the only Android device I've ever been able to get this to run at full speed on is the older Nvidia Shield, or even the new one. I haven't tested it, but I'm sure it'll work on the newer one too. But this little board is totally capable of streaming 4K 24, 30, or 60 FPS depending on the app. If your app supports 4K 60 FPS streaming, this little chip could handle it. I do have access to the Google Play Store, and one of the big reasons I'm not a big fan of Android TV is the App Store. It's very limited when you compare it to the phone or the tablet version of Google Play, and there's just not a lot of stuff in here that I really want to mess around with on Android TV. Of course, I can get to some emulators and a few games. So we're going to test a couple of these out, and if you're interested in seeing more native Android gameplay on the C4 or emulation, I do have a full Android video that I did with this board. It was kind of my first overview video, and I tested a bunch of stuff in that. I'll leave a link in the description. And overall, for native Android gaming, this little board works quite well. This is Real Racing 3. We're getting a decent frame rate here. It's fully playable. I also tested Asphalt 9 and Dead Trigger 2. All of them work great with a joypad. Moving over to a little bit of emulation, like I mentioned, I tested more in my first video, so check that out. But we have a little bit of Dreamcast here using the Redream emulator, upscaled to 1280 by 960 with widescreen hacks on. We're getting a constant 60 FPS here with Crazy Taxi 2, and I also tested Marvel vs. Capcom 2. So overall, the ODROID C4 handles Android TV quite well. You can download this from the forum. I'll leave a link in the description. Now, don't expect this to be a super powerhouse and beat out an Nvidia Shield. I mean, this is a $50 low-powered single-board computer. But it does work well with most of the stuff that I've tested so far. I do have a couple more videos. I'll leave links for those in the description. That's pretty much it for this one. Really appreciate you watching. If there's anything else you want to see running on the ODROID C4, just let me know in the comments below. But like always, thanks for watching.